The year was 1863, and Paris, the glittering capital of art, culture, and refined taste, was about to experience a shock that would reverberate through its salons, cafes, and galleries for generations to come. In the gilded halls of the Salon des Refusés, an alternative exhibition hastily arranged by Napoleon III himself to appease hundreds of rejected artists, hung a painting so audacious, so brazen in its defiance of convention, that it would ignite a firestorm of controversy. Le Déjeuner sur l'herbe by Édouard Manet was not merely a painting, it was a provocation, a declaration of war against the Academy, and the opening salvo of a revolution that would forever change the course of Western art. When visitors first encountered the work, they recoiled in horror. Here was a scene of apparent innocence, a picnic in a forest clearing, transformed into something scandalous, something that violated every rule of propriety and artistic decorum that Parisian society held sacred. Two fully clothed gentlemen sat casually in conversation, while a naked woman gazed directly out at the viewer with an expression of cool indifference. In the background, another woman in a chemise waded in a stream, but it was not the nudity itself that shocked. After all, the salon walls were regularly adorned with mythological nudes, with Venuses and nymphs in various states of undress. No, what scandalized was the context, the modernity, the uncomfortable reality of it all. Édouard Manet was no stranger to controversy, though perhaps even he could not have anticipated the tempest his luncheon scene would unleash. Born in 1832 to a wealthy, well-connected Parisian family, Manet had disappointed his father's hopes for a legal career, choosing instead the uncertain path of the artist. He studied under Thomas Couture, a respected academic painter, but quickly grew restless with the rigid conventions of historical painting. Manet was a man of his time, a flaneur who frequented the cafés of Montmartre, an observer of modern life who believed that art should reflect the world as it actually existed, not as ancient mythology or biblical narrative imagined it. By the early 1860s, Manet had already begun to develop his distinctive style: bold, simplified forms, dramatic contrasts of light and dark, a flattened sense of space that rejected the careful perspective and modeling of academic painting. He admired the old masters, Velázquez, Titian, Giorgione, yet he sought to translate their visual language into something contemporary, something that spoke to the modern Parisian experience. In this ambition lay the seeds of Le Déjeuner sur l'herbe. The painting's composition reveals Manet's complex relationship with tradition. The arrangement of figures deliberately echoes Marcantonio Raimondi's engraving, The Judgment of Paris, after Raphael and Giorgione's Pastoral Concert. Manet was clearly announcing his awareness of artistic lineage, positioning himself within a grand tradition even as he subverted it. The three foreground figures form a loose triangle, a classical compositional device, yet the space they occupy feels oddly compressed and stage-like. The background woman appears too large for her distance, defying the laws of perspective. The light falls flatly across the central nude, eliminating the soft modeling and atmospheric depth that academic painters prized. Everything about the technique announced a new visual vocabulary, but it was the content, not merely the style, that ignited outrage. The nude woman was unmistakably modern, her discarded clothes piled beside her, including contemporary garments instantly recognizable to viewers. This was no Venus, no allegorical figure removed by myth from the present moment. This was a real woman, believed to be Victorine Meurent, Manet's favorite model, naked at a picnic with bourgeois men in modern dress. The implication was unavoidable. This scene suggested a liaison, perhaps with a courtesan or kept woman, exactly the sort of transgressive encounter that occurred in the Bois de Boulogne, where respectable society mingled with Paris's demi-monde. The woman's direct gaze was perhaps most unsettling of all. She looked out at the viewer, at you, with an expression of calm self-possession, neither ashamed nor seductive, simply present. In the artistic conventions of the time, nude women in paintings were meant to avert their eyes, to exist as objects for the male gaze, safely contained within mythological or historical narratives that provided moral distance. Victorine's steady, matter-of-fact stare shattered that comfortable arrangement. She refused to play the role of passive object. Her gaze implicated the viewer, made them complicit in the scene, and asked uncomfortable questions about who was really on display. The symbolism in the painting operates on multiple levels. The still life in the foreground, the basket of fruit spilled onto the woman's discarded clothing, evokes traditional vanitas imagery, suggesting the transience of pleasure and the passage of time. Yet here, rather than serving as moral warning, it seems merely part of the scene's casual disorder. The woman in the background, wading in the stream, creates an ambiguous spatial relationship. Some scholars suggest she represents a different temporal moment or a symbolic figure of purity, contrasting with the foreground's earthiness. The forest setting itself carries associations with pastoral poetry and the classical tradition, yet Manet strips it of romantic idealization, rendering it with the same flat, matter-of-fact light he applies to everything else. When critics encountered Le Déjeuner sur l'herbe at the Salon des Refusés, their responses ranged from bewilderment to fury. Louis Etienne wrote that the painting showed a commonplace woman of the demi-monde, as naked as can be, alongside two dandies. The influential critic Ernest Chesneau complained about Manet's technique, arguing that his figures looked like wooden cutouts against the landscape. The great poet and critic Théophile Gautier dismissed it as a young man's practical joke. Even Napoleon III, who had authorized the exhibition of rejected works, reportedly found the painting offensive. Yet not everyone condemned the painting. Émile Zola, the novelist who would become Manet's friend and champion, recognized something revolutionary in the work. He understood that Manet was attempting to forge a new kind of realism, one that didn't moralize or sentimentalize, but simply presented modern life in all its complexity and contradiction. The younger generation of artists, those who would soon be called Impressionists, saw in Manet's bold technique and contemporary subject matter a path forward, a liberation from academic constraints. The scandal must be understood within its historical moment. The Second Empire under Napoleon III was a period of rapid modernization, of Baron Haussmann's wholesale reconstruction of Paris, of new department stores and railway stations, of a burgeoning middle class and a visible demi-monde. Traditional social hierarchies were being challenged. The boundaries between respectable society and the underworld of courtesans and actresses were becoming porous. Manet's painting captured this unsettling fluidity, this sense of moral ambiguity that characterized modern urban life. The painting also emerged at a moment when photography was beginning to challenge painting's claim to represent reality. If the camera could capture the world with mechanical precision, what was the painter's role? Manet's answer was to embrace a different kind of truth, not photographic literalism, but a bold, simplified vision that emphasized the painted surface itself, the artist's hand and eye making sense of experience. His flat areas of color, his dramatic tonal contrasts, his rejection of careful modeling, all announced that painting was not reality, but a representation of it, created through artistic choices. Le Déjeuner sur l'herbe would haunt art history. It became a touchstone for modernism, cited by generations of artists as a founding moment of the avant-garde. The painting's refusal to provide moral comfort, its insistence on presenting modern life without editorial comment, its formal innovations, all would influence the Impressionists, the Post-Impressionists, and the entire trajectory of 20th century art. Picasso would create dozens of variations on the composition. Artists would return again and again to its provocation, its questions about representation and reality, about who looks and who is looked at. In the forest clearing of Manet's imagination, a revolution was born. That naked woman's steady gaze across more than a century and a half still poses its uncomfortable questions. What are we really looking at? Who has the power in this exchange of gazes? What does it mean to represent modern life honestly? The scandal of Le Déjeuner sur l'herbe was not merely that it showed a naked woman at a picnic. It was that it forced viewers to confront their own assumptions, their own complicity, their own position in the act of looking. And in that confrontation lay the birth of modern art.